Welcome. I want to talk to you about QGIS, a free open source geographical information system. My name's Ian and I'm founder of gisuniversity.com. Why would you want to choose QGIS over any other GIS? Well, these days, at the desktop level at least where I work the most, QGIS is just as functional and just as stable as any of the very big commercial geographical information systems. And in my mind at least, I think it's just a matter of personal and corporate preference as to which one you would choose. Where do you get it? You just go to the Download Now button and there's a whole bunch of different versions that you can download. I used to favour the 32-bit version years ago, but the 64-bit version's fantastic now. I use the Windows version, but there are other versions for Mac, Linux, BSD and Android. Let's have a look at it. Okay, so what we're presented with, once it's opened, is this layers panel, a map area and a series of drop-down menus and buttons. Probably the most important ones I want to show you at the moment is the Add Vector Layer, which is what we use to open a vector map. We can browse, and what we're going to open is a cadastral file or a property boundaries file. There's a whole bunch of different formats that you can open, and today we're going to open an Esri shapefile. So the map opens. If we click on it and we go right mouse button click, we can look at the properties. And I want to just change this from a simple fill into a no brush, which makes it transparent because we're going to overlay it on top of an air photo. I can use all these buttons. Here's the hand button, which allows me to move it around. The zoom in button, which allows me to zoom into it. The zoom out button, which allows me of course to zoom out. We have this button here, which is the zoom last. This button here, which is zoom to the entire layer, and that will zoom to the layer that we have highlighted. We can make a selection upon which we can zoom into if we would like to. We can unselect that. We can also click on this information button here to get information about any polygon we want. Here we are, we've clicked on 400 Centre Street. Let's now open a raster image or an air photo. So what we're choosing is 4 raster images, 4 air photos, and they're Dr. Sid type air photos. And we can see, as for the vector formats, there is a whole bunch of different formats that we could open. The key to this though is that these 4 files are geographically registered and they are geographically corrected so that they can sit directly underneath the cadastral file. We can zoom into them. We can also click on the cadastral layer and just move it up to the top, and it now overlays the air photo. That's the technology of what we've been looking at. Now let's have a look at some of the ways we may interpret these data that we're looking at. There are 2 ways that we might look at this information. One is quantitatively, the other way is visually. Now I see a lot of people looking at these maps on screen and they're not really thinking about what they are. So there's some very simple sorts of interpretations that we can do and ways that a GIS analyst might look at this sort of information. So the first thing we might look at is the shapes in the map. So here we're looking at rounded shapes, rounded shapes, rounded shapes that indicate water features. Another thing that we might look at is the density of development. So clearly we've got highly urbanised areas, less dense areas, and perhaps in some areas we've got rural residential areas, and then we've got rural areas. Think about this in terms of surrogates. What are the sorts of information that we can derive just by looking at these shapes? Another thing that you might look at is the more dense areas are often the areas that are going to be the driest. So they're going to be the driest on the basis of soil types that are going to get rid of water flows fairly quickly. The other thing is maybe topography. Maybe these more dense areas are on higher ground. So some of the ways you can look at an air photo is to say, okay, what can we say about this watercourse here? Well, one thing I can say is that it's obviously deep water. How can I tell that? The surrogate, by looking at this up here, which is to say, if we've got a large mooring up here, then this water must be navigable. Anyhow, I just wanted to introduce you to the idea of thinking like a GIS analyst and not just taking these GIS maps and GIS photos at face value. Right, I'm sure I'll see you in another video soon.